Hi, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Books and Beaches. So I am back filming in my desk chair because you know what? It's just kind of comfortable and I needed a break from filming on the floor. So I know I filmed my March new releases video here, but it's a nice little break for me. So hopefully you all don't mind this view. You still see my books a little bit, but I promise we're still talking about books, so nothing like that is going to change. But I am here today to talk about some recommendations for another topic in March, and that is Memoir March. Now, I know there are a lot of different readathons and ideas going on in March. Good friends of mine are running middle grade March, and I do have some plans for that, so stay tuned. But my in-person book club decided to focus on Memoir March. So as I was putting together a list of books for us to vote on, because normally Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library runs our in-person book club, but we always vote 2 months in advance on what books we want to talk about, or what books I should say we want to read. She asked me to run this particular book club because she wasn't going to be there. And so I figured it would be helpful to come with at least a few book ideas for people. And then we create a list with their suggestions as well. So I did some digging and came up with this list of ideas and then added a few more from what people suggested. And I was like, you know what? This would make a great video idea. So here I am to bring you some ideas of books that you could read for Memoir March. Now, is March the only month that you can read a memoir? Obviously not. But I think this is a great list. Now, the first ones that I'm going to list in this list are ones that I haven't read yet, but I found to be of interest to me. And then I did add a couple to the end of this list that I have read and I would highly recommend. So let's go ahead and take a look and get started. So the very first one I added to my list was Hunger, and this is by Roxane Gay. And this says it's going to be a searingly honest memoir of food, weight, self-image, and learning how to feed your hunger while taking care of yourself. So I myself am on kind of a new healthcare journey. I have always loved working out, and I've always been, kind of plus size in my adult life, but I always love, kind of learning more. So I thought this was a really interesting one to add to the list. And it is fairly, well, I shouldn't say fairly short. It is 320 pages. But I want to say the audiobook was a short audiobook, if I remember correctly. But it was just a topic that was super relevant to me in the time being. So I wanted to add that one. Following that is one that I think has made the rounds through BookTube quite frequently. I know I have this one on my Kindle. I just haven't gotten to it yet. And this is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. And this is the story of, she was known as Emily Doe. And it says she is the writer, the artist, the survivor, the fighter. Her story of trauma and transcendence illuminates a culture biased to protect the perpetrators, indicating words. A criminal justice system designed to fail the most vulnerable. And so we're getting this from her own words. This was the Brock Turner case. So I've been meaning to read this one for a really long time. So added that one. After that, another one that I have seen all over, and I have heard rave reviews about this one. This is Crying in Hmart, and this is by Michelle Zauner. And it says, from the indie rock sensation known as Japanese Breakfast, an unforgettable memoir about family, food, grief, and love, and growing up in Korean America, Korean American, excuse me, in losing her mother and cooking to bring her back to life. So it's going to be a story, like I said, of family, food, grief, and endurance. She proves herself far more than a dazzling singer, songwriter, and guitarist. So I have heard phenomenal things about this book. So I added it to my list. And like I said, this was a list I came up with for my book club, but I thought what a perfect opportunity to share it with all of you. So, all right, next. This one I hadn't heard much about, but like I said, when I was doing research for this, I wanted to find memoirs that some people may have heard about, but weren't necessarily like the ones that you're always hearing listed. And this was Solido, and this is by Javier Zamora. And okay, now I guess this one probably was kind of popular because it looks like it was on a lot of bestseller lists, including the New York Times, Read with Jenna Book Club, winner of the Los Angeles Times, so maybe I just missed it. But it says, a young poet tells the inspiring story of his migration from El Salvador to the United States at the age of 9 in this gripping memoir. So that one caught my eye, and though it is long, I am wondering if it's a book told in verse. I'm not quite sure. So I always love, a different perspective kind of story. So the one that my book club ultimately decided on, and it was kind of a fun thing that we got to send, the typical Britney meme, we chose The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. So that is what we will be reading for our in-person book club in March. And as many a millennial probably know, this is kind of Britney's tale of, growing up in the spotlight like she did. So that is our choice for Memoir March, but I'm sure most of you have probably heard that one already. Another one that definitely made its rounds of the internet and booktube was Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Believe it or not, I have not read this one yet, but I heard it is phenomenal on audio because he does narrate it, and who does not like to listen to that voice? But this says, it is unflinching honesty, unconventional wisdom, and lessons learned the hard way about living with greater satisfaction. So, it says the book invites us to grapple with the lessons of his life as he did, and to see the point was never to win, but to understand. So it is one that I've kind of always had on my TBR, but it wasn't a big priority to pick it up. But it does sound interesting. Another one that I've had on my TBR, and I have it actually right here. This will save you a nice thumbnail, is Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. And this is, it says, it is the story of justice and redemption. Right there. So this is his dedication to fighting for justice and equality. It says he was a young lawyer when he founded the Equal Justice Initiative, a legal practice dedicated to defending those most desperate and in need. And so it says it's an unforgettable account of idealistic, gifted young lawyers coming of age, a moving window into the lives of those he has defended, and an inspiring argument for compassion in the pursuit of true justice. So I have heard such good things about this. It's been on my shelves for quite a while. So this might be another one that I pick up in March. We shall see. So there's that one. All right. Now, the next couple were ones that when I was doing my research, I had not heard much about. But as I looked into these to put them on the list for book club, they definitely caught my eye. And dare I say they're a little bit older. Like this next one came out in 2013. So it's not old by book standards, but it's older that you don't hear the booktube community talking about it as much. And this one is Spilled Milk by K.L. Randis. So this is about, it says Brooke Nolan is a battered child who makes an anonymous phone call about the escalating brutality in her home. When social services jeopardizes her safety, condemning her to keep her father's secret, it's a glass of spilled milk at the dinner table that forces her to speak about the cruelty she's been hiding. In her pursuit of safety and justice, Brooke battles a broken court system that pushes her to keep her father in the home. Spilled Milk is a novel of shocking narrative, triumph, and resiliency. So I had never heard of that one, but I mean, it sounds like a really powerful story. So there's that. After that, I came upon this one, and I think this one at first I thought it was one of the Duggars, but when I really looked at the name, this is called A Stolen Life, and this is by J.C. Duggard. And this came out in 2012, and this is a raw and powerful memoir, her own story of being kidnapped in 1991 and held captive for more than 18 years. So it says in the summer of 1991, she was a normal kid. She did normal things. She had friends and a mother that loved her. She was just like us until the day she was stolen. So, and she was held captive for 18 years, and she was the object for someone to use and abuse. And she became a mother and a sister, and on August 26th, 2009, she got to take her name back. And, you know, this is her story. So I, you know, 2009, I was in college, so I'm sure at some point I heard about this, but I don't remember the story. So there's that. All right, next up we have The Sound of Gravel, and this is by Ruth, I think it's Warrener? Names, guys, I apologize. And this is the remarkable true story of one girl's coming of age in a polygamist Mormon doomsday cult. So I know there are lots of stories out there like this, but this one caught my eye because it was one I hadn't heard of before. And it says she was the 39th of her father's 42 children. Growing up on a farm in rural Mexico, where authorities turned a blind eye to the practices of her community, she lives in a ramshackle house without indoor plumbing or electricity. And it keeps going. Like normal, I will link all of these below, and I think that's one thing with memoirs, you know they are going to pack a powerful punch, and I think this one will. So there's that. All right, another one. This one is Breaking Free, and this is by Rachel Jeffs. This one is, it says Breaking Free, How I Escaped Polygamy, the FLDS Cult, and My Father, Warren Jeffs. Now, this is another one of those where I am sure this might be like a popular story that was out there. I don't always know all of those. Because I'm sure Warren Jeffs might have been maybe a popular news story at some point. Because it says he was the self-proclaimed prophet of the FLDS Church. But this is going to take you deep inside the secretive polygamist Mormon fundamentalist cult run by her family and how she escaped it. So, yeah, I think this one could be a very, very hard-hitting memoir as well. So, and it looks like it makes connections to John Krakauer's best-selling novel Under the Banner of Heaven. So, which I have not read as well either, but that one is also on my list. So there's that. All right. Another one that I had not heard of until I was looking at this list. And this one could be slightly controversial. And so I will just put that out there right here because I know sometimes I have received comments in the past where people find either certain authors that I've talked about or certain book concepts that I've talked about to be controversial, and it's okay. Everyone has their own personal preferences. So I'm just putting this one out there right now. But this is When Thoughts and Prayers Aren't Enough, a shooting survivor's journey into the realities of gun violence. And this is by Taylor S. Schumann. So, like I said, could be a very controversial memoir to read, but it did win the Forward Indies Book of the Year. It was a finalist, I should say. And it was the ECPA's Top Shelf Award winner. But Taylor Schumann was a victim of gun violence when a man walked into her workplace with a shotgun. And she invites us to see what it means to be a survivor after the news vehicles drive away and the media moves on. Healing is slow and complicated. She suffered through surgeries, grueling rehabilitation, and counseling to repair the physical injuries and emotional trauma. She came face to face with the deep and lasting impact of gun violence. So, and it goes on from there. So, like I said, I will link this one below, but this could be a little bit more of a controversial memoir to read, but it did catch my eye. So, all right. After that, we have, and I think this one I've seen making the rounds on BookTube, and this is Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. Something tells me this might have been a book of the month choice, which is why I feel like I've seen it more often. It does say it was an indie bestseller. So this is the story of a childhood defined by the looming absence of her incarcerated father. So her father was in prison and she doesn't know what he did to end up there. So it says, this book will step into the world of growing up a poor Black girl in Indiana with a family's fragmented by incarceration, exploring how isolating and complex such childhood can be. So I think that one sounds very interesting. And like I said, I feel like it was a book of the month choice. So, all right. So these last three books I have to tell you about are books that I have actually already read. So memoirs that I have experience with and I cannot recommend highly enough. And they are all slightly different. So let's take a look. All right. I wish I had copies of all of these, but unfortunately I don't. The first one is a book I think I read like 2 or 3 years ago, but I cannot forget this book. And this is The Sun Does Shine. It's How I Found Life, Freedom, and Justice. This is by Anthony Ray Hinton, who also worked with Brian Stevenson, whose book I mentioned earlier. This is basically like, this man was on death row and for a crime he didn't commit. And so he is telling you his story of being on death row, knowing he's innocent, and how corrupt I believe he lived in Alabama, how corrupt the justice system in Alabama was. It basically just said, you're close enough to the suspect we were looking for. And then talks about the relationships he made with other inmates, on death row. Like, it is such a powerful and moving story. And I probably would have never picked a book up like this up until someone recommended it to me. And it's one that I almost would like to pick up again because I remember details of it, but I would like to go back through and reread this story. And because the connections that he makes with people on death row that you would never expect him to make were super powerful. So it is, definitely one I would recommend. Now, one that is an interesting one to recommend because, first of all, this is one I highly suggest you pick up on audio, is Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood, and this is by Trevor Noah. Now, I know not everyone was a fan of Trevor Noah when he was on his, what was it, The Late Show or The Tonight Show? I don't know what Trevor Noah it was, because they assume, it's heavily weighted one side or the other when it comes to politics. But his book isn't really about that. His book truly is about, stories from a South African childhood, and it is so funny. And that's why I think you need the audiobook, because he narrates it and he mimics his mother's accent, he mimics his grandmother's accent. There is a chapter in this book where he talks about his dance crew that he was part of performing at a school, and I am not going to spoil it for you, but it is like horrifically funny. So it is such a good book that talks, like you said, talks about growing up in South Africa during apartheid. And if you didn't like him on his show, I still suggest you pick up this book because it's not bad at all. It is truly about his life growing up, and it's fabulous. It's so good. So, and then last one I kind of wanted to throw in there because it's completely different from a lot of these I've talked about. And this is Talking as Fast as I Can. It says From Gilmore Girls to Gilmore Girls and Everything in Between. This is Lauren Graham's book. First of all, I loved Gilmore Girls. I loved Parenthood. I just love Lauren Graham as an actress. And once again, this is a fabulous one on audio because she does narrate it. So if you love listening to Lauren Graham, this would be perfect. And it was super interesting to kind of see how she made it in Hollywood. So this is different than some of those hard-hitting ones that I've talked about earlier in this video, and it's just like a good, fun listen. So those are all the memoir suggestions that I have for you. Have you read any of them on this list? Let me know which ones you think I should pick up in the comments below, or what are some of your suggestions for memoirs that we should add to this list? As always, if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.